I've said it a dozen times, but it's still true. The heart of a show like Ducktales isn't in its spirit of adventure, or the nostalgic roots of its classic cast of Disney characters, or even in the value of all the cash in Scrooge's money bin. At its heart, DuckTales is really just a show about family. A broken family who came together after years apart. A family that was made better for having been made whole again. But families are built on trust. So what happens when that trust is destroyed by lies and secrets and guilt? This is the last crash of the Sunchaser. Ever since Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Donald came to live with their Uncle Scrooge, they've been through a lot. They've faced ancient curses, wandering mummies, dastardly criminals, and even some of their own inner demons. And through it all, they've kind of come together to be a bigger, closer, more cohesive family. DuckTales finally feels complete.
Experimental race cars!
Lasers!
Aeroplanes?
You bet, old friend!
The family has been together for about 6 months now, and they've overcome so much. But as they get ready to leave on what promises to be their biggest adventure yet, one final secret lurks beneath the surface. The reason of why Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck didn't talk for almost a decade. The mystery of Huey, Dewey, and Louie's mother, Della Duck, and the Spear of Selene. If you haven't been keeping up with the plot for the whole season, don't worry about it. The kids lay down a mountain of exposition to make sure that everybody is up to speed.
Okay, so what do we got?
The documents shredded on the week we were born. According to the note we found in Castle McDuck, that date is connected to
the Spear of Selene, the mysterious unknown thing your mom took from Scrooge.
Their quest for answers is ultimately going to culminate in one of the biggest, heaviest, most heart-wrenching scenes of the entire series. But before we get to that, I just want to stop, slow down, and make sure we appreciate the rest of this episode. Yes, this episode is heavy and heartbreaking, but it's also one of the funniest, most action-packed, and well-written stories DuckTales has had so far. We're absolutely going to talk about the end of this episode, spoilers and all, but let's make sure we enjoy everything else that makes this episode great before we get there. Starting with the mistake that makes this entire story possible. Letting Scrooge McDuck fly the plane.
If Launchpad can do it, how hard can it be?
Not very.
It was harder than Uncle Scrooge expected.
Of all the irresponsible...
Not even a real crash.
Scrooge doesn't crash the plane in a normal way, but instead crashes it into a peak, where it precariously dangles over the precipice of doom. The crash also jolts loose a slip of paper the kids need to solve a puzzle that will give them answers about the Spear of Selene and the boy's mother, blowing it across the ship and leaving them to try and retrieve it without the adults figuring out what they're up to. And suddenly, we're having a bottle episode, which is one of my favorite ways to tell a story. In this episode, it all takes place on the Sunchaser, in this contained area, and all of the tension is derived from the characters interacting with each other. The parents and the adults are arguing over how to get out of the situation safely, while the kids are trying to get this piece of paper and unravel this mystery without getting in trouble or taking notice of the adults. And it's all really tense.
Mr. McDuck?
Kids?
Mrs. Binkley! Sorry, I just thought I could keep the blame circle going.
And what I love about this episode is that despite all of that tension it has building towards a heavy conclusion, it's consistently funny about it at every step. Even when the kids get caught sneaking around the plane and are grounded to their seats, it finds levity in the tension by cursing them to watch the end credits to Darkwing Duck forever. Or at least until Dewey cracks, acts recklessly, and ultimately gets caught by Uncle Scrooge. Again.
What have you got there?
Not secrets!
Literally the worst answer you could have given.
But even here, the episode doesn't let up on great writing, funny jokes, and amazing visual gags. Dewey is chasing after the scrap of paper that holds the key to the mystery of his mother, and Scrooge is chasing after Dewey, but moving too quickly rocks the plane and puts them in danger. So they have a breakneck chase at tiptoe speeds with dramatic tension and slowly dodging obstacles, and it's just amazing. On top of all the fantastic gags crammed into this episode, it has some of the best animation I've seen in the series so far. I can't say for sure, but it really feels like the production team has hit its stride with these characters. Every facial expression Scrooge makes is amazing, and every character just seems to be more comfortable and confident in their movement than they did in the early episodes. In the same way that the characters' relationships with each other seem to have solidified, the show itself seems to have reached a wonderful peak. This is Ducktales at the top of its game. And that's why it's the perfect time for Ducktales to fall apart. If you haven't watched this episode yet, here's your warning. This is where the spoilers start. This is where everything falls apart. When the scrap of paper Dewey is chasing blows out the window and onto the engine of the plane, he risks everything and climbs on the wing to chase it. And Scrooge follows. On its own, this is a tense enough scene. Dewey is foolishly putting the lives of everyone at risk to pursue this mystery, and everyone in his family is pleading with him to let it go, for all their sake. But he won't, and when Uncle Scrooge catches up with him, he agrees to come back inside on one condition.
Tell me about the Spear of Selene.
And so, Scrooge does. Scrooge tells the story of his younger days, when he went on adventures with Della and Donald, and how they reached the ends of the earth. Della wanted more. She wanted to see the stars. And so Scrooge built her a rocket ship in secret. But before he could give it to her, she stole it and was lost in a cosmic storm.
Your Uncle Donald and I never spoke again. Until you three showed up on my doorstep.
This is actually about where I expected this story to go, and it's really similar to the Della Duck origin story featured in a Dutch Donald Duck 80th anniversary comic, except with a few modernized twists to bring it in line with the new Ducktales story. What I didn't expect is how Huey, Dewey, and Louie would react.
Cool. So you're the reason our mom is gone.
What?
You built her a crazy, dangerous super rocket.
Then you encouraged her to keep flying through a cosmic storm?
And this is where the entire family falls apart. The kids feel betrayed and are too hurt to listen to their uncle. Scrooge himself is so defensive for having kept this secret so long, he's not patient enough with the boys to talk them through it carefully. Scrooge doesn't just isolate himself from the boys either, but also Webby, destroying her with one careless sentence halfway through the argument.
This is a family matter. You are not family.
As they argue back and forth, the plane, previously stable, teeters on the tip of a needle and eventually crashes down to Earth, taking the stability of the McDuck clan with it. It's heartbreaking to watch the McDuck family fall apart, but I actually kind of love it. Not the actual downturn of their family relationship, but how well this is executed. The entire season has largely been about these characters getting to know, trust, and love each other, and they came a long way. Webby was learning to trust the boys were learning to trust Scrooge, Lena was learning to trust Webby, and Webby was earning the respect of Scrooge. But all that progress was tainted by a series of secrets that left that trust impure and destroyed it. And the way that the last crash of the Sunchaser destroyed it was perfect. Almost like playing the series premiere in reverse. Just as the premiere was all about Dewey winning over his Uncle Scrooge, this penultimate season closer is about Scrooge losing the respect of that middle child. And just as Scrooge's relationship with the kids was forged in the Sunchaser's first crash, it was broken in the plane's last crash. And that final crash serves to reset Scrooge and the boys back to where they were at the beginning of that premiere. But the story still isn't over, and neither is the heartbreak. As the episode closes, we see that Scrooge really did do everything he could to stop Della, and when that failed, he seemingly spent years and more than half of his fortune sending more rockets into space to look for her, only stopping when his company physically forced him to. But Scrooge didn't get to tell any of his family this, and his grief and guilt over this drags his character development back even further. Back before the first episode of the series, back before the original 1987 cartoon, all the way back to the beginning, to his first appearance in Donald Duck comics, to the lonely, bitter man in an armchair.
I hope you're happy.
I am.
Yeah, like I said, this episode is pretty heavy, but it executed everything beautifully. It's a hard note to end on before the season finale, but it's important to remember that this story isn't over. We have every reason to believe that the family will patch things up, get back together, and be stronger than ever. After all, if the Sunchaser serves as the symbol of their family togetherness, then we know everything's going to be okay. We heard it from the Sunchaser's pilot himself.
Every time the Sunchaser goes down, she always gets right back up in the air.
Here's to that next flight.